Hello, everyone. We'll be starting in about 1 minute. I want you all to know you're all in mute, so don't talk to me. You can put things in the chat box. We'll be watching the chat box. This is being recorded, so if you don't want to be recorded, because might talk about what you have in the chat box, you are now warned that this is being recorded, and you'll be able to look at it later. We'll send out a link after it gets rendered, so you'll be able to review it if you want to. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope everybody's in the right place. This is a webinar about something called Smarketing. It's when we do smarter lead conversion. It's when the marketing department and the sales department are not arguing and screaming at each other, but they're cooperating, and what they're doing is transparent to the other. That is, sales knows what marketing is doing, marketing knows what sales is doing. They might even have a written agreement about what each are going to do. I'm David Aronson from Digital Inbound. My partner on this webinar is Carrie Lauby from Sandler Sales. I'll be doing the first part of the session talking about marketing and how automated marketing can help generate really good leads, and some of the background and reasons that there is even a concept of inbound marketing. Carrie from Sandler Sales will then take over and talk about how sales can best use those leads that are generated and close deals, because we're all in it to make money, and the only way to make money is to close deals. Again, if you have questions, please put them in the chat box, and there will be a chance to speak at the end of the presentation. We'll have a question and answer, and we'll unmute people as we go. So here we go. There was a guy named John Wanamaker, and he actually started department stores. He was the first person that actually created a store that had departments inside. And actually, he was a bit of an advertising whiz, and he did a lot of advertising for Wanamaker's, which was the name of the first department store in America. And he made this statement: half the money I spend on advertising is wasted. Now, that's a terrible thing to say, but actually, that wasn't his problem. This was his problem. The trouble is, he didn't know which half. Thankfully, we're now on the internet, and we do know which half. And in fact, we can track very well exactly where the marketing spend is bringing in dollars, which is a wonderful event for the internet. And this statement is no longer true. There's one other person that I'd like to talk about, and that's a guy by the name of Peter Drucker. A lot of people don't know who he is now, but it's too bad. There is a Drucker Institute out here in Los Angeles. And Peter Drucker was the management guru. In fact, really started the whole concept of management consulting, wrote books and books and books about organizations and how you should run it and how you should deal with people, etc. But he made this wonderful, wonderful statement: business has only two functions, marketing and innovation. He goes on to say that a company is really only in business to create a customer. And the only way to create a customer is through marketing and innovation. Everything else, and just think about all the other things that a company does, can actually be outsourced to somebody else, but the company itself must do marketing and innovation. And let's start talking about my favorite subject, marketing. So the first thing I want you to actually understand is something called ZMOT. and you could Google it while we're talking. Google actually created this book, which is online and you can download it for free. And it's called Winning the Zero Moment of Truth, ZMOT, the Zero Moment of Truth. Why is it so important? Because it was an analysis of how everything about the way things are sold is now different than it used to be. We all know this, but I want to run through it a little bit. There was a guy from Procter & Gamble who's always been known as a great marketing company. And he said that the first moment of truth is at the shelf. And the second moment of truth is the actual experience with the product. Well, the problem is ZMOT has broken that. Now, it's not the first moment of truth that's important. It's the ZMOT. It's the zero moment of truth. It's all the friends that you talk to, not personally, but online. It's all the reviews that you look at. It's all the blog posts that you see, maybe even videos about the product. It's all the pre-shopping in-store and in-home that people do mostly on the internet. Just a simple fact, 3.5 billion searches, that's B with a billion searches, are done daily. That's just on Google. And this model of marketing isn't just broken in B2C, it's also broken in B2B, where the old first moment of truth was the handshake, when you actually met the person personally. Well, that's not true anymore either, and we can show you a whole bunch of statistics that say that model is broken as well, because ZMOT takes over. Even companies that are doing business to business do research on the internet, do searches on the internet, look up reviews, look up LinkedIn profiles before they first meet the person that they may be doing business with. And there's some statistics that say as much as 50% of the people who are about to buy something already know who they're going to buy from before they actually contact the company. So here's another slide. These are all actually from Google, all right? The stimulus is, I need something. And now there's search, there's reading reviews, there's watching videos, there's your network, which is all online. And then you actually go out and start buying the particular item that you're looking for. So ZMOT, in order to counteract ZMOT, what you need to do is put more content in the correct place at the correct time and the correct content based on something that we're going to talk about, which is the buyer's journey. So what is a buyer persona and why do we need to know about it? There is actually a website that you can go to, the Buyer Persona Institute. The entire site is dedicated to talking about a buyer persona. If we need to put content on the internet, if we need to fill that ZMOT moment with stuff that we want the buyer to know about, then we need to put content on the internet. But the question is, what kind of content? Where should we put it? How long should it be? What should it be about? That's all a buyer persona and what a buyer persona needs to know. Here's some of the things that the buyer needs to know. What are their priority initiatives, the success factors, the perceived barriers, the buying process, the decision criteria? The more we know about the buyer, the better we can communicate to that buyer before they're even ready to buy. And that's the point of knowing a buyer persona. So here's a generic buyer persona. We need to sell something to a facilities operations manager. And we're going to create a fictional Fred and give some idea of who the Freds of the facility operations management position are, what they do, what their goals and challenges are, what their roles are, what kind of personal background do they have. All of this so that we can write content and put it in the right place so our Freds of the world will read it and learn about us, that we will be in some control of that zero moment of truth. Here's a really specific one. This is probably a really long B2B sales. We want Diane Director. We want this person, and we know a great deal about her. We know what kind of degree she has. She knows what kind of experience she has. We know her values and her goals. As more information, we can never have enough information about who our buyer persona is so that we can put the right content in the right place at the right time. All of this is the job of marketing. We also know that the buyer actually has several stages that it goes through. There's the awareness stage. Our family needs more space. The kids want a pool. The schools in this neighborhood stink. Consideration stage. It's time to move, but what can we afford? Which areas are better to commute to our jobs? Which ones have the better schools? What kind of a mortgage rate can we get? Decision stage. We need an experienced realtor to really help us through. We're now ready to buy. We know where we want to buy. We know the area we want to buy. We know the price range of the house we want to buy. For each one of these stages in the buyer's journey, we want to make different kinds of content for them to read because there's different kind of content that they need at this particular stage in the buyer's journey. Here's what we really want to do on the internet. We want to take strangers, which are on your left. We want to turn them into visitors to our site. They're still going to be strangers. We want to make them leads. And for our discussion, a lead is someone who has filled out a form on the internet and given up their name and email address for something that they thought was of value. So they're still strangers, but we actually now know their name and email address. We actually know a little bit more than that if they've filled out a form because we know what form they've filled out. If we're using a piece of automated marketing software, we're also going to know all the pages that they landed on, and we know that they downloaded a certain piece of material. So even though there's only 2 pieces of information that they may have filled in on the form, their name and email address, there's several other pieces of information that we know, and based on that, we can segment emails to these particular people because we want to take those leads and we want to nurture them to become customers. And that nurturing process is going to use automated workflows. It's going to use automated emails. It's going to use lead scoring. And everyone who's selling ought to have a CRM, and there ought to be some CRM integration. And at the last part of this entire cycle of attracting, converting, closing is delight, because we'd like to take the customers that we have and we'd like them to fill up the left end of this chart and get us more strangers that visit our site, because they're going to be on social media, they're going to be writing emails, they're going to be forwarding things to their friends, and that's going to bring us new strangers who are going to become new customers. Word of mouth by delighting the customers that we have. Now, I want to take this same chart, which is actually the paradigm of inbound marketing, and flip it on its side. And now it looks a lot more like a sales funnel. The top of the funnel is fairly wide. The bottom of the funnel is narrower. We'd love for the bottom of the funnel to be as wide as possible, but we're going to go through the same steps. We're going to attract strangers. We're going to make them visitors on the site. We're going to convert those visitors into leads, eventually using email optimization, syncing with the CRM, lead scoring, marketing automation tools. We're going to turn them into customers, and we're going to delight those customers so that they become promoters and give us more strangers. All of these are tasks of the marketing department. This is a complicated slide, but I just want to give you an example of the kinds of things based on where the buyer is in their particular journey as the kind of material that they're going to want to look at. So just for instance, in awareness stage, you want analyst reports, you want editorial content, you want expert content. When that same person is in consideration stage, they want comparison white papers. They want expert guides. They want live interactions. And when they're really ready to make a decision, they want vendor comparisons, product comparisons, case studies, trials, product literature. Now, if someone is in awareness stage and all I have in my web presence is vendor comparisons and product comparisons, quite frankly, they're going to leave my site. They're not going to stay on my web presence because I don't have the information that they want. Here is the complex problem that marketers, inbound marketers, marketers that use the internet deal with all the time. This is an equation where C is the probability of conversion. What reasons do we need to overcome so that the person landing on a particular landing page will actually fill out the form? because all the work that marketing does on the internet and the internet presence is all based on getting that name and email address. If we don't get the name and email address, then all of our work is gone. And there's lots of things that can cause the person, once they reach the landing page, to not fill out the form. The easiest one that we know about, the more elements are on the form to fill out, the less likely the person will fill out the form. But there's a lot of other issues. It depends on the product that we're selling. It depends on the offer that we're offering. And all of these come into play as to whether we'll get a conversion or not. So this is an interesting slide, and it's interesting for the statistic that's not on the slide. The statistic that's not on the slide is that Google Analytics actually has a technical term that it calls bounce rate. And a bounce is when someone visits one page of a website and leaves the website after only visiting that single page. Generally speaking, that person will never come back to that website. Now, as you can see on this slide, 80% of website visitors are in awareness stage, but most websites deal with data that's for decision stage. So what happens? 80% of the people that visit the site that's got decision stage information on it leave the site and never come back. What does that tell us? We need to put awareness stage data in our web presence to grab that 80% of website visitors and reduce our bounce rate in Google. Here's a landing page, a typical landing page. It tells me something about what it is I'm going to be getting. It gives me some of the data from the actual element. It's all about inbound marketing trends in 2018. Simple message, first name, last name, and email to bring down the anxiety. It also has a statement about GDPR. If you don't know about GDPR, that's a ruling, a set of rules that the European Union came up with about privacy, how I use your data, how I collect your data, etc. This is the end result of inbound marketing. If I've done everything properly, I get people to fill out this form. I now have their name and their email address. Actually, come to think of it, everybody that's on this webinar has actually done this. Not on this form, but another form, and that's how you got the link to come on to this webinar. So this is the key. We now have the first name, we have an email address, and I can email you more information and bring you down the funnel. Bring you from an awareness buyer to a consideration buyer to a buyer who's ready to make a final decision. All of these things are about testing. I mean, car companies actually crash cars just to test them. People take tests all the time. We go to doctors to test things all the time. In medicine and in manufacturing, there's constant testing of all kinds of material to whether the material is correct or right. Marketing is actually all about testing. The previous slide that we showed, I can actually test that slide and add things or subtract things. So if I actually used a different graphic here or a different graphic here, change the text here, I can test whether I get more people to fill out the form based on changing one or two elements. Always be testing is what marketing is all about. And it wants to continually perfect on this page, get the conversion rate of this page higher and higher and higher. And that's the job of marketing, because I've now created a lead, and at some point in time, I'm going to have an agreement with the sales department as to when that lead gets turned over to the sales department. Maybe it's the person has to fill out 2 forms. Maybe they have to fill out 3 forms. Maybe I don't care how many forms they filled out, but if they filled out this one particular form, it gets turned over to the sales department. But up until this point, the marketing department has attempted to create leads that would be satisfactory to the sales department. One of the ways that we know that is if the sales department and the marketing department are talking to each other. If they're not talking to each other, if they don't have an agreement with each other, we may never know whether there's good leads being sent or bad leads being sent, or whether the sales department is taking care of the leads properly. I want to show you some statistics from the state of inbound, which is done by HubSpot Research. The first one is marketers see higher ROI from inbound marketing tactics, and it's huge. It's more than 50%, whereas the others one either couldn't calculate it or is outbound, which has got a very, very low percentage, only 16, and 13 actually don't even know which one is better. The state of sales at the present time. And the important thing here is salespeople say they source the most leads themselves, showing a potential rift between marketing, who should generate the most leads for the sales teams to work. Additionally, 27% of salespeople are spending over an hour a day on data entry work instead of selling, meaning critical time is lost to administrative work. If we have an agreement between marketing and sales as to what the leads should be, perhaps we can break into that, have less time actually doing administrative work and more time actually selling. So let's take a look at a couple of more statistics here. 26% of respondents operate under a marketing and sales SLA, a service level agreement. Only 26. Some say that they're generally aligned. Now, quite frankly, I think if you're generally aligned, but you don't have a written SLA, I don't think you're really aligned at all. So as far as I'm concerned, that first line of generally aligned doesn't really make any sense, and I'm not sure it's as effective as having a tightly aligned service level agreement between marketing and sales. Part of that is marketing needs to see and have transparency into what sales is doing, and sales needs to see and have transparency into what marketing is doing. Here's another one that's very, very interesting, and that's marketers with SLAs have faith in their strategy. And those that don't have SLAs don't have faith in their strategy, which really just strengthens the point that when marketing and sales are working together to create the kinds of leads that sales wants and the kinds of leads that marketing can provide, everybody's a lot happier in the organization. Salespeople with SLAs call out marketing as the top generator of leads. This is exactly what we want in all cases. We want the marketing department to do its job, and its job is to create leads that the sales department can use effectively. When there's an SLA, when there's an agreement, when there's what we call Smarketing, that is the alignment of marketing and sales, everything goes well, and there's more ROI in the company. Teams with SLAs see higher ROI from inbound marketing, and it's astounding numbers, a great deal more ROI when there's an alignment between marketing and sales, all pointing to marketing and sales needs to talk together, marketing and sales needs to cooperate, marketing and sales needs to have transparency into what each other are doing, and there ought to be a written agreement between sales and marketing. So we've gone over briefly what we can do in terms of marketing and how we need cooperation and even a service level agreement with the sales department to generate the kinds of leads that can be used effectively. What I now would like to do is turn this over to my partner in this webinar, Carrie Lauby from Sandler Sales, and talk about now that these great leads and based on the service level agreement have been created, how well sales can now use those leads. And if you wait just a moment, we need to stop sharing, and Carrie's going to start sharing. There we go.
Okay. All right. I'm assuming that everyone can see the PowerPoint here. Yes? Hello, everyone. Thank you, David. I am guessing that all of you may have quite a few questions, though. Lots of good statistics and concepts there. Um, Please feel free, if you want, you could type your questions over in the side chat box area, and then we'll have a question and answer session here at the end. So conceptually, we're looking at, marketing has fulfilled their job, right, of attracting the customers, and ideally you have the different levels of content on your site for the different stages. And then the lead is coming in, and the marketing qualified lead is coming in into HubSpot or another platform that you may be using, and it has all sorts of information in there. So what is sales supposed to do? I think really what's happened is sales, the concepts of sales has changed a lot in the last 10 years. And initially, 10 years ago, sales was only outside salespeople. And then as the internet has grown and ZMOT has come into play, where the customers are much more savvy, doing all of that research online before engaging in any kind of conversation. Now what we're looking at is that your end goal is to have a conversation with the individual. And so sales has turned into customer service or customer happiness teams and inside sales teams and SDRs and all sorts of names for what I will call sales. And so long gone are the days where individuals that are in customer service used to be able to just see themselves as service people. I think everyone is now salespeople to a certain extent, and part of that is because the consumers or the businesses out there are so educated on your product or your content. So what we're going to cover in my section here today is we are going to look at, talk a little bit about what's in HubSpot and what the data looks like. Then we're going to talk about the reasons people buy, the purpose of salespeople. So I just outlined a little bit about who salespeople are today, and then using the data that you get from marketing. Because to successfully, when that SLA is put into place, you get that higher return, that higher ROI, because there is an agreement and because the sales department is accurately understanding, one, the data that they're getting from what system you're using, and then also using that data in their conversations, in their conversion process. And so in the end, we'll finish up with tracking your results, because online marketing and sales need to be tracked and fine-tuned with testing. So what can the data tell us? This is a screen snap of a HubSpot profile, and you are now able, so a marketing, qualified lead, when you're giving it, when you're getting it from marketing and then they're passing it down and it's sales qualified lead, you're getting something that has lots of information about your potential prospect. And what can we see in there? Well, we can see who they are and where they work. That's very common data nowadays. But we can also see where they are in that buying process. And so you will more than likely going to receive leads that are in different phases of that buying process. And depending on how you indicate your sales qualification, within a tool such as HubSpot, you're actually able to indicate when that individual has gone on a specific page, when they have downloaded a white paper, for example, or when they have participated in some level of communication with the company, then they become what we would call qualified and get pushed over to sales. And so that's what an SLA is for, is to clearly identify, one, what marketing is doing to identify the buyer personas and to market them, and then how is that individual going to be qualified from an online standpoint so that it can then be pushed in to the sales team. And so we'll know where they are in the buying process, or where, and also potentially what problems they may be having or what pain they may be having. And where we can see those things are on what pages did they visit on your site? What kind of downloads of content did they engage in? Who are they? What individual are they within, if you're dealing with a large enterprise level company? And so looking at all of those things, and what kind of buyer persona they're fitting based on the work that marketing's done to outline your buyer personas with input from sales, you will be able to come up with a story around the data. And a good salesperson looks at this data and analyzes it and comes up with their strategies or tactics about conversations of how they're going to, one, create good bonding and rapport, and then two, walk that potential prospect through an exploratory process depending on where they are in that buying cycle, and figure out, is the pain that they're having or the problem that they're having worth it for them to then engage with you, qualify from a budget standpoint, and then close the deal. So a good salesperson looks at all that data. A amateur salesperson really just plows right through it. And they see it as a lead generation source, and I have a lead. And I think, David was talking a little bit about this, where sales believe that they're bringing in, a huge percentage of the leads. I think those numbers, are very overinflated, as salespeople often sometimes can do with their pipelines. And so a professional salesperson doesn't plow through this data. And they really use this data to create their strategy or their tactic. And the real bad salespeople assume that they don't even need it at all, and that it's just a name and a phone number, and they don't need to know much else. So let's, before we finish the loop and connect the data up with closing it, let's talk a little bit about our purpose as salespeople. And so, lots of times what this is left with, because of all this technology, salespeople are feeling, I want to say, lost or unsure or uncertain about their role as salespeople. And so what we want to do is think back to why people buy. And so what I want you to do is think to yourself about a purchase that you've made, we'll say in the last 3 years or so, that was a major purchase, meaning an item that was, we'll say, over $500. Could have been a car, could have been maybe life insurance, television, a vacation, a mattress. I'm putting up, although mattress, the costs have come down considerably for those. So think about this item that you bought. And now what I want you to think about is, why did you buy that item? What was the reason of why you bought that item? And I'm not talking specifically, I bought a Volkswagen versus a Honda. I'm talking about, why did you buy the vehicle? And so some of the reasons that you might be coming up with in your head might look like this. So I have a car and I can't get myself to work because my car broke down, or I need life insurance so that my family can survive if something is going to happen to me. Well, I need a television because my TV broke down and I have nothing to do. I want to take a vacation because I'm overly stressed. or because my family deserves a trip and we haven't gone for a long, long time, and it's going to create that bonding and wonderful memories that we're going to have for the rest of our lives. Well, my mattress has gotten really old, and it's not feeling the same. My back's hurting a little bit, and I can't sleep. I'm not sleeping well, and so I need to buy a new mattress. I don't think in the life of I'm sure if you went in, the only reasons why people buy new mattresses, and I know this because I was in a mattress store in the last year, is either they have an old one and they don't sleep well, or they've had a family separation and they need to, they have a new place to live. So the point of all this is, in thinking about these reasons, is, do any of these have anything to do with features and benefits of that product? And in the history of running this with all these different classes and talks that I've done, there has never been a case where someone has said, I bought this because it had, a backup camera. I needed a car with a backup camera, and so I went out and bought myself a brand new car. Or, I needed a mattress with a foam top because I just wanted that feature or benefit, and so therefore I went out and bought that mattress. And so what I would like for you to see on here is that people don't buy because of features and benefits. All right? They actually buy because they have an innate need, pain, or problem. And that problem that they're coming to the online platform and looking at your website, looking at your content, looking at your material, that problem is actually why they're there in the first place. And so it is a salesperson's role to uncover that problem and be able to convert it into a good, solid conversation and a close. So the salesperson's job, and I speak broadly when I say salespeople, is to qualify or disqualify the prospect. Ask the right questions based on the data. Deal with decision makers. Identify budgets, and then close the sale. Now, I know that the marketing departments in the SLA will sometimes be very actively involved in qualifying or disqualifying the prospect. Meaning there are things you can do online in HubSpot to be able to qualify and or up to a very close extent disqualify the prospect. Marketing tools also enable you to ask the right questions based on the data. They enable you to set up, cadences of emails or questioning strategies if you're using an online chat platform that could actually ask you, well, you're on this page. Are you looking for more information about X? Let me take you to a different page to help answer your question. So it also helps you deal with decision makers. But what the marketing data will tell you is who is the individual and what, where they are in their company. But it might ideally not actually tell the salesperson whether or not this individual is a decision maker. So whose role is that? Well, it's sales. It's that conversation to start to find out, how does your company make decisions? Who are the individuals that are involved? Where do they come from? What is their interest? What is their individual pain? And so what we're looking at here is we are looking at the smart salespeople really use the data. They use the data. Now, the amateur salespeople qualify soft and close hard. So what that would look like is they would take that profile of that individual, and not use the data to try and qualify them further, and they would just go hard for the close. And when you do that, that puts too much pressure on your prospect and also too much pressure on the salesperson. When you combine real professional sales methodology with qualified leads and marketing data, you're looking at qualifying the prospect very hard and then closing them soft. And that process, ideally for that prospect, should feel like a friendly conversation that you're able to have and then be able to look at exploring. It's more like an exploratory conversation of, here's what we have. You've already seen all this data on the site. You already downloaded all of these, handouts and brochures and white papers, and so it's coming at it from more of a personal level, and then trying to talk to them about what's happening in their business, meaning what's the real impact of the problem that they're having in their store, in their location, or if it's a consumer, in their life, right? So what's the impact of the problem that they're having, and then understanding what are they looking for to solve that impact. So having the HubSpot data means that you have the ability to customize what you're doing from a sales perspective. And what I'm speaking of, David talked about buyer personas. And in inside sales and call centers, they're heavily using buyer personas and creating all of these, an array of different buyer personas for their buyers. And then they're taking the persona and they're actually going through and creating call scripts or talk tracks, is what we might call it in a sales perspective if you're doing outside sales, but creating actual talk tracks or call scripts for those buyers based on those personas. And so when you combine the personas with the call scripts and then overlay the marketing and the sales qualified lead data, you're actually able to say, okay, this individual is only at an awareness level in the buying cycle. They're a buyer persona of a procurement director in the financial arena of a large company. And then we're even looking deeper at what that individual has downloaded, what they've looked at, anything that, taking a look at their profile of who they are as a person. And when we take Sandler process and sales methodology into that, then we start looking at disc profiles, at who that person and how they come across, and then we're able to create a call script for that type of buyer persona. And so you can create very detailed call scripts, email templates, and then run them into cadences. And the goal is to customize the data and base it on, predictive lead behavior. I mean, establish a process and make sure that all of your sales teams are on the same page. And this goes across, marketing, and then even customer service and support, and the outside sales force. Or if you have an inside, we'll call account services department that support the sales team. And so by creating email templates that take the buyers through these cadences, then you can further qualify them on the sales side, and decide at what point, if you're let's say a startup company or a small company with not a big sales team, or you're a founder and you're running all your own sales, you're able to qualify that buyer so much farther down the pipe, so that then at the point when you're having a conversation with them, it's worth your time. And so, the whole goal of this is that, how often are you going to call them and email them? What is going to be enough, right? You need to decide that. as a sales team, how, if it's a buyer persona of X and they're a sales qualified lead with a score of Y, then how often are we going to call an email, right? And so maybe the stronger their predictive lead score, the longer. And what a predictive lead score is it is a score that they get in HubSpot based on the criteria that marketing and sales decide is that individual is, they touch all these different pages and points and interaction, and they gain points. And so that prospect then gets this prospective lead score. And your team, sales and marketing, need to decide at what point, is the stronger predictive lead score, do they get more attention from sales, and before it, we I won't say give up on them, but before they go into the penalty box. And so it's important that you decide, what happens if that prospect had a very high predictive lead score, but they never responded, okay, to any of the sales interaction. Well, that's what an SLA is for, is deciding, okay, if that lead never responds, what's going to happen to that person? Do they just disappear into sales and to never be heard from again, right? Or do we turn them back into a marketing qualified lead, which means, do we push them back to the marketing department and let the marketing department take over that, what sales would call a totally dead prospect, right? Because sales is always so, we love to exaggerate sometimes. And, so, are we going to take that lead and turn that back to the marketing department so that marketing can continue having touch points with that prospect, right? And so that's the purpose of what a service license agreement is for. And that's how you can use data and use this handoff between sales and marketing to push that information back to marketing when it's appropriate, but also make marketing clear on how far is sales really willing to go. How far are you going to go to qualify these clients or these prospects and qualify them through to the close? So this is just a basic slide here showing the Sandler, selling process. But my point of showing this is you have to have a sales process. You got to have a system, because your company, or if you're choosing to invest money in an online marketing tool, which is essential nowadays, you're getting all this data. And if you're turning it over to a sales team that aren't all on the same page, they aren't speaking the same language, they aren't using an established process that works, then you are throwing away that money on the marketing side. And so, have a clear selling process amongst your sales teams, not just outside sales, also customer support, also account services, so that everyone understands where that prospect is, when they become a client. And then if we're in the phase where marketing wants to delight them, right, where you're wanting to get referrals and you're wanting them to become that champion for your business, well, then maybe there is something where sales needs to be involved again, or account services needs to be involved again to ask for those referrals and then convert those referrals into your business. So the goal of the Sandler selling process is to disqualify that prospect or close the sale. So we qualify hard and close soft, and it's either they qualify or they disqualify, or we're going to go through and close the sale. And if they're disqualified, we close the file. All right. So know your role as a salesperson, and in sales and in between this, technology and marketing today, large contracts don't close themselves. Enterprise business does not close itself with just online interaction. Understand the business problem based on the pages that they visited, the actions they took, what is shown in the data. Try and understand the severity of their issue. Now, the only way this can be done is by a real offline conversation, by having them engage with you and your personality and your company, and walking them through that sales process of questioning, qualifying, understanding their pain or their problem. How is it impacting their business or them personally? Is it affecting their time? Is it affecting their money? Is it affecting their reputation? Is it affecting their productivity? I mean, it could be 1,000 things I could go on here. But how is that problem actually impacting their business? And then how is it affecting them personally? Right? Just because they're a procurement manager in a large enterprise, corporation, or they're a single individual at home, doesn't mean that they aren't being affected personally by the problem, the reason they came on your website in the first place. There's a reason behind that. And people buy emotionally, they make decisions intellectually. So the salesperson's role is more about understanding the impact, how it's affecting them personally, and how they feel about it. What is their pain behind the problem they're having? So sales still has a real important role. And David, do you want to hop in?
Yeah, I think what I want to do now is I'm going to unmute everybody, or actually allow you to unmute yourselves. And don't everybody speak at once. And please, if there's noise in the background, please mute yourself again. But Les, I'd like to open it up to question and answers at this time. So I've now unmuted everybody. And again, if you have noise in the background, could you please change the noise or mute yourself again? But if you have a question, please tell us what you want to ask.
Any questions? You can type it in the chat area too if you want. No? Nobody?
Anything else? Anything else you want to know about?
No, it's very helpful. I love that we learned that sales is not about features and benefits anymore.
No, it's not.
Just,
because
like that.
They can learn all about features and benefits online. Let's just throw that out there.
Right. They know about all the features and benefits from being online.
Right. No, absolutely. And I think it gave me a new perspective for our business, definitely with the need for the service. And so I think it's a whole new way to look at marketing. So thank you. I feel smarter from this marketing.
Good. Excellent.
Well, hopefully we didn't overwhelm all of you, meaning I know that, David has just amazing content in the beginning about things that you can do to target those buyer personas, and then setting up different types of content on your website, right, for those people coming in. And so, hopefully we didn't overwhelm you, but this is a process. This doesn't happen overnight.
Right.
We spend our careers working with companies, moving them through to successfully navigate and then get a high ROI on their investment in both their online platforms and in their sales individuals that they're putting time, money, and effort into.
And HubSpot can do a great many things, but it's just a hammer. It's a really neat hammer, and it's a hammer that can do a whole lot of really good stuff. But it's just a hammer, and if you don't have a process to use the hammer by both the marketing department and the sales department, it's just a hammer, and it's not going to help anybody. So someone did ask if this is going to be available as a download. We have been recording this. We're still recording it. As soon as we have no more questions, I'll stop the recording. It takes a while, and I am teaching tonight, so you won't get an email, but you will have an email with the recording, a link to the recording in it. There's another question: does HubSpot integrate to Salesforce? Yes, it does. As a matter of fact, Salesforce was actually one of the first companies that invested in HubSpot when it came into existence about 9 years ago. Although I also have to mention, HubSpot does have its own very good CRM, which has a cost of zero. And we could talk about that later if you want. And Carrie, someone asked, why use a submarine as a graphic?
Oh, I love that. You know, how I like to think of the submarine is that the top part of the submarine is what your prospect sees above the surface. The lower part of the submarine is what you are using to have control over the sales process and not let your prospect control it. So that's part of why I like the stealthiness of the submarine. The other reason why is because in these different compartments, as we train, you need to batten up each compartment as you go in order to progress to the next one.
Excellent.
Any
other questions?
We will be sending out a survey and some material, a connection after this. So that you'll have our contact information and you can schedule, conversations or questions with us individually. If you do have things that you're wondering that were not covered in here, we'd love to know. Even just let us know what you were looking for if it didn't get answered, and that'll help us improve this as we partner more.
Yeah, for both of us, both myself and for Carrie, this is really overviews of what both of us really do in our lives, in our business lives. And Carrie's got a lot more to tell you about how to run a great sales organization. I've got a lot more to tell you about how to run a great automated marketing system that starts with a plan and some research on what the content should be based on who your buyer personas are. So don't think of this as what you just heard is the end all of any of these subjects. And again, you have our contact information on here, and you'll be getting our contact information again. And please, if you have any further questions, get in touch with us.
Thank you very much. Thank you both.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Okay, I think we're good. No more questions.
Yep.
All right, everyone.
I'm gonna stop the recording. Pardon? I'm going to stop the recording. Thank you all for attending. And as we said, we'll be in touch.
Bye.
Bye.